This week, I'm back to give you my thoughts on the Hori Split Pad Compact after 2 weeks of use. So let's go ahead and take it out. Welcome to Mike Techs It Out. I'm Mike and I'm back to talk about these Joy-Con alternatives, the Hori Split Pad Compact. Last week's video were my first impressions out of the box, but of course there's a lot more to say about them than what was covered in that video. So let's start with the design. First, let's address this gray and yellow color. While I think it's cool, it's kind of a weird choice. I feel like it kind of gives me early 2000s retro, and I'm surprised they went with a two-tone instead of just doing a flat color. Now they do have an apricot red and some Pokemon options, but it's weird that they didn't start with a basic black or white version of the controller for people who just want like a simple look. I mean, aesthetics are always going to be up to the person, but the launch options are a little weird. Aside from the color, the controller has a nice texture grip, and I have found it to be very comfortable. It's made the Switch way more enjoyable to hold, and part of that is due to the size with the compacts. While they are bigger than the Joy-Cons, they don't feel much bigger thanks to their ergonomics. The one thing I initially found weird about the design is that they had this piece of plastic protruding from the back. Then when I thought about it, I realized it was to help balance the weight of the Switch. Have you ever noticed if you try to hold the Switch up by the Joy-Con, it feels like that thing is about to snap? Probably because it is. Well, these get rid of that issue by adding a small piece of plastic that overhangs the back of the Switch. It makes the system as a handheld feel way more sturdy, and I can confidently pick this up by the controller and not feel like something catastrophic is about to happen to it. They also fit in the docks in case you're wondering about that. The last thing with the design is that they balance the weight of the Switch pretty well. I didn't even notice it until I handed the Switch to my husband, and he noticed how much lighter the Switch felt overall. The OLED Switch with the Joy-Cons weigh 15.3 ounces, and the Switch with the compacts actually weigh 1 pound and 0.04 ounces. So overall, the Switch is actually heavier with the compacts, which makes sense, because though these controllers lack batteries, they are a bit bigger than the Joy-Cons, but the grip and the extra plastic overhang makes the system feel more balanced, which can be interpreted as feeling lighter. Next, let's hop into the buttons. I mentioned in the unboxing, I'm not a huge fan of the short trigger throw, but a commenter did point out that it's good for shooters, and that is true. It's going to depend on your personal preference. I do play a lot of shooters, just not on the Switch. I usually play on PC with a mouse and keyboard or my Xbox Elite controller too, but I do change the trigger throw to the shortest throw when I play shooters, so it was a really good point. The only shooter I really play on the Switch is Splatoon, which I won't be using this controller for because I use the gyroscope controls for that game, but the commenter is correct. If you like shooters, you'll like the shorter throw on the triggers. Now, as far as the short throw triggers, the regular Joy-Cons, in my opinion, are still better because they have that satisfying click when it bottoms out. The compact triggers feel a bit mushy when bottoming out, but they're definitely usable. The shoulder buttons on the compacts are one area that's better. They have enough height where I don't accidentally press them by brushing the top of the controllers like the Joy-Cons, and of course the range of motion on the thumbsticks are way better for precision than the Joy-Cons are. So if you were to play a shooter on the Switch, just the thumbsticks alone make it a better experience. I will say most of the face buttons feel fine. I mentioned in the unboxing that I like the bottom out click on the face buttons of the Joy-Cons better, but I think I actually prefer the buttons on the compact just because they're bigger and feel closer to full-size controller buttons, and you get a real D-pad. Now, one thing I didn't touch on in depth in the unboxing were the specialty buttons. So each side of the controller has an assign and a turbo button. I haven't really used the turbo much, but basically if you were to play a game you need to hit a button repeatedly by just pressing it, you can assign a turbo button to it by holding the turbo button and that particular button you want to assign for a few seconds. It also has options to press the desired button at a rate of 5, 10, or 20 times per second. This can be adjusted by holding the turbo button and moving the analog stick up or down on the corresponding controller. The turbo button can also be used to emulate holding a button so you don't have to press it at all. This is activated by pressing the same button with the turbo button for a second time. Pressing the combination the third time turns turbo mode off, and you can also press turbo and plus or minus depending on which side of the controller you're on to turn it off as well. The assign button works in a similar way. You can take a face button and map it to the back button. I know I said in the unboxing that I don't use back buttons, which is generally true, but I have used it for Pokemon with the plus button so I can get on my ride Pokemon a lot easier, and it's been really convenient. Setting it up is the same as the turbo button. You just hold the button along with the assign key for a few seconds, and it sets the assignment to the back button on that side of the controller. You can also unassign it by holding the assign button and the corresponding back button. It's just a really nice bonus to have. For the turbo and back button assignments, you can only assign buttons on the side of the controller where that turbo button is. For example, you can't assign the A button from the right controller to the turbo button on the left controller. Overall, as far as the buttons, they're a good size, feel durable, and are a bit mushy when they bottom out. They're not the best, but they're good enough where I don't really miss the Joy-Con buttons while I'm using the Compact. Now for the things I don't like about these controllers. It's some of the things that I mentioned in the first video, which are the lack of gyroscope and wireless connectivity. Now it also lacks the IR blaster, rumble, and NFC for amiibo support, but these things aren't used as frequently, so they're less important, in my opinion at least. The reason I even bring it up is I would like to use these for Splatoon, but the lack of gyroscope makes it impossible to play the style I like to play. So basically, I'm stuck using the Joy-Cons when playing portable. Also, without wireless connectivity, this is basically a handheld-only controller, and it would have been awesome for people without a Pro controller to be able to use this while docked instead of having to use the awkward-feeling Joy-Cons and the little handheld holder combo thing. Now, Hori does have a wired Joy-Con attachment for the Pro version of the controllers that you can use to play these docked. But I really think most people prefer wireless connectivity at this point. I'm also unsure if they're compatible with the compact version of the controllers. I just like these controllers so much, I wish they could be full Joy-Con replacements. I also had a weird issue where I started the system from sleep and my character kept moving in Pokemon on its own. I had to take the left controller off and put it back on to get it to stop. But I did notice that the manual said to make sure not to move the thumbsticks while putting the controllers on the console. So maybe I was moving the thumbsticks while I brought the system back from sleep. So I tested this by holding the thumbstick while waking up from sleep, and it did happen again. But unlike the first time, I just put the system back to sleep and woke it back up again without touching the thumbstick, and that fixed it. So just make sure not to mess with the thumbsticks while waking the system up from sleep. Overall, the Hori Split Pad Compacts are a welcome upgrade over the Joy-Cons while still being pretty compact. They don't look or feel out of place on the Switch, and they keep me far away from the Joy-Con's awful thumbsticks. But that's going to do it for today. Let me know what your experience has been with Hori's controllers, or if you're looking into getting one. And I'm going to go ahead and bring this video to a close. But if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to tell a friend, tell a coworker, like, share, and subscribe, and hit that belly bell notification to get notified when I drop a video. And always do at least 2 things at the same time. Peace.